Picture this. You were in class one day, probably in a subject you don't particularly care for, say math, science, English, whatever it is. Same teacher, who you also do not care for, rambling on and on, also about something you are not interested in. Suddenly you hear some cheering from the other classroom. It's not very loud, but you can still hear it. They may be playing a game, they may be watching a movie, and there's an interesting scene in there. You never know. Many of you believe that what I'm about to say next is something about shifting your attention toward that classroom instead of focusing on your own class. However, if you are a former Butterfield student, you have the ability to tune that sound out. Throughout the years, Butterfield has had the reputation of being the only school without walls. And as far as I know, I've never heard anybody complain about it. Some people think it's weird. Some don't understand how we studied with all that distracting noise in the background. But from what I've heard, the students and the teachers preferred it that way and believed it was a good way to help kids focus during school. My mother, who worked in the library while I was at Butterfield, always told me she loved how there was no walls in there, and she liked how if she needed me, she could just come over to the classroom, didn't have to open the door or anything, and she wouldn't feel like she was interrupting. However, we recently received news that Butterfield was going to be getting walls in the school, and that has caused a minor uproar between the students and the teachers. Many have voiced their opinion, and the ones I've heard, each one of them was against having walls. In these next few minutes, I will tell you why having open space classrooms at Butterfield benefits students more than closed classrooms. Reason number one, open areas allow students to make friends easily, especially if they are new to Butterfield. Say that you are a new student, you're only in second, third grade, you're really shy, you don't know anybody, and nobody in your class is really giving you any attention. But you look over and you see somebody in the other classroom maybe making a little bit of eye contact with you. A few minutes later, you're smiling at them, maybe mouthing with you, hello, how are you? And by the time recess rolls around, you're confident enough to go up to that person and ask if you want to play with them. And you don't have to feel like an idiot by doing that. Reason number two, students have learned to be quieter in the hallways. Because Butterfield does not have any walls, the classrooms are just separated by chalkboards and bulletin boards and all that. Whenever students come back in from recess or a field trip, they know that since there's no walls separating the classrooms, they do have to be quiet. Now, even though a lot of the students can just tune that noise out, it's just a matter of respect. And some of the teachers may not be able to tune that sound out of little first graders in the hallway. And they would find it very irritating if they were disrupting the class. So regardless of how the students feel, it's just a matter of respect for the teachers. And actually, I talked to Joey Weishauer, asked him about his opinion on this, and he said, as I've watched the students from Butterfield grow up, I've noticed that they seem to be better behaved and more respectful in the hallways. I think that aspect came from trying to act mature around the sixth graders and learning early on that you can get in trouble for yelling and dancing in the hall. I don't know if we ever had any problems with people dancing in the hallways, but I do know that because the Butterfield students are here, we do know that we need to be respectful in the hallways, especially when there's no walls surrounding. And also, I also talked to the principal, Joey Folsom, and she said, as an administrator, I love being able to walk through the building and basically see in a glance what is going on without disturbing. Kids and teachers are so used to movement in the school that I can walk around the halls or even go in the classrooms, and they never think twice of it. In most classes that have doors, once you open the door, you have interrupted and you have to explain why you're there. So if Mr. Price or Mr. Smith or somebody walks in right now, immediately the attention is going to be shifted towards them. And in a way, they feel like they've interrupted class and they need to explain why they're there. But Ms. Folsom, because there's no walls, she doesn't even have to get the teacher's attention. She can just slip in there and just watch the class, and nobody even needs to see that she's there. So that was always really beneficial for her. Reason number three, students learn to tune out background noises at a young age and carry that with them for the rest of their lives. Two of my friends, Robin Okamoto and Arian Taylor, who I've been with at Butterfield since second grade, also found this very beneficial, especially when they got to high school and it gets harder to focus. Arian said, walls limit the concentration development of the students. Without the walls, the kids were able to focus on their work and block out the white noise of other teachers and students. This is useful, obviously, as the student grows so that he or she cannot be distracted and excel in school, as well as extracurricular and personal activities. And Robin said pretty much the same thing. She said, I can't say exactly, but it somehow just feels wrong to have walls in the schools. It somehow seems like the school wouldn't be the same at all. Without walls, it feels so much more open, and you're not like you're isolated. It's more connected. Which brings on to the fourth one. With pod-like areas, it appears that the students have 3 great teachers instead of just one. There was a recent study that I found online, and it was an article about, the first one was about the influence of open space and closed space classrooms on teachers' attitudes towards the school building. It said for closed space classrooms, it was found that the higher the teacher's certification level, so if they had a master's or a doctorate, the more unfavorable the teacher's attitude was toward the school building. So they didn't like being in the closed classrooms. However, for open space classrooms, the higher the teacher's certification level, the more favorable was the teacher's attitude toward the school building. So the teachers obviously prefer having more open space and pod-like areas rather than just one closed classroom. And there was also a study it put on 4th graders. It was an auditory test, and it was how well that they can pay attention with distracting noises. And they also did a test on students who had closed classrooms. And it said results indicated that children from the open space classrooms achieved significantly higher scores on the test than did the children from the traditional classrooms. It was concluded, based upon the results of the study, that children who are exposed to varying and unpredictable auditory distractions in their classroom environments are better able to perform on a task requiring auditory skills in the presence of distracting background noise. So when a student is in an open space classroom, they can expect noise. So if suddenly we hear somebody in the hallway, we're not expecting that right now because they should be in class. But if you were in an open space classroom, you wouldn't even think about it because you expect it. So that's how it kind of helps the students able to focus better because they're not expecting. They're expecting it, so therefore they know what to do. And also, Ms. Folsom said in another quote that because the teachers and classes plan and work together, the entire grade operates more like a family. That is one of those feeling type things that have a positive effect on learning. I believe students as an administrator, that's right. So when she was on a field trip, or say that the teachers were planning a field trip, that would mean that they could get together in the pod areas and work on that together or do an art project together. And they wouldn't have to get out of their classrooms and try and meet in another room. In conclusion, even though we have succeeded at Fayetteville High School with walls in our classrooms, we probably wouldn't be able to focus like we can today if it weren't for that open space at Butterfield. I just hope that this staff at Fayetteville High School is prepared to have more easily distracted students than they did before. Thank you.
Okay.